Are we live? Hey! Welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time with no spoilers and no plot recaps. I'm Ann Stott, and tonight Real Takes is live for the first time ever. So I had a really hard time deciding what to talk about this week. As some of you might know, we sometimes every week follow the astrological calendar, and we are at the end of Capricorn season for the year. And there are so many Capricorn filmmakers I wanted to celebrate. I couldn't choose one, and I just decided to go live and talk about them all. Okay, so that's what we're doing. All right, so first of all, it was Cary Grant's birthday this week. I don't need my glasses yet. It was Cary Grant's birthday this week. I love Cary Grant. Huge star of the entire golden age of Hollywood, made films from the 30s through to the 60s, had an incredible career. He's probably best known for two of the films he made with Alfred Hitchcock, North by Northwest and To Catch a Thief. I always want to call To Catch a Thief Cat on a Hot Tin Roof because he's called the cat in the movie and he walks on some roofs. But Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is actually a Paul Newman, Elizabeth Taylor film made of a Tennessee Williams play, which is a very different thing than To Catch a Thief with Cary Grant and Grace Kelly, which is just tons of fun set on the southern coast of France. You cannot go wrong. But I want to talk about a couple of other Cary Grant films that I love. First of all, my all-time favorite Cary Grant performance is in The Philadelphia Story as C. Dexter Haven with Katharine Hepburn and Jimmy Stewart. So that's a must-see, huge film of his. My favorite Hitchcock with Cary Grant is actually Notorious, which also stars Ingmar Bergman and Claude Rains, and it's in black and white, and Ingmar Bergman and Cary Grant are so beautiful on screen together. I want to eat them up. I want to lick the screen when I watch that movie. It's a psychological thriller about Nazis in post-World War II South America. You didn't see that coming, did you? And also, for people who aren't that into classic cinema, just FYI, the plot of Mission Impossible 2 takes from the plot of Notorious. All the details are different, but the fundamental story is the same story, and many of the events of Notorious, like big plot moments, are recreated in Mission Impossible 2. The horse race scene is in Notorious. There's a big car chase, obviously, in Notorious. It's not even close to the car chase that's in Mission Impossible 2 because car chases have gotten more elaborate these days than they were when Notorious came out. But I will also want to talk about a lesser known Cary Grant film that I love a little bit earlier called Holiday, which also stars Katharine Hepburn. They made a series of films together, many of them with the director George Cukor, who directed The Philadelphia Story and Holiday. He also directed Sylvia Scarlett, which they were both in. But I want to talk about Holiday, where Cary Grant plays a free spirit who gets engaged to a very wealthy woman whose sister is Katharine Hepburn. So intrigue there. It's just a lovely little, I guess we would call it a dramedy romance that I really, really enjoy. It's one of my favorites from the 30s. So thank you, Cary Grant, for all the incredible cinematic pleasure you have given us over the years. And what a career. Amazing. Okay, so while we're on classic cinema, we also need to celebrate Michael Curtiz, Capricorn film director, whose birthday was this week. And he's best known for directing White Christmas, Mildred Pierce, and Casablanca, one of the most enduring Hollywood films ever. But He also, lesser known, he directed movies all through the 30s, a lot of pre-code films, and a lot of these films that studios were churning out, just sort of like 80-minute stories that just were getting, they just made so many of these films in the 30s. But he did a string of films with Bette Davis, a young, not yet famous Bette Davis, that are really interesting to watch. And some of them aren't available to stream right now. There's 20,000 Years in Sing Sing with a young Spencer Tracy. There's Cabin in the Cotton, Cotton in the Cabin. Now I'm forgetting it. We're live. Cabin in the Cotton. About itinerant farm workers. Also with Bette Davis. But there are two that are available to stream. And one is Front Page Woman, which is about a couple who both work at a newspaper. And the guy doesn't think that women can be as good newspaper men as men. So she sets out to prove him wrong. There's so many movies from the 30s set in newspaper rooms, and this is a fun one. And then this is the film I really want to highlight, unlike the others that I just talked about. There's a film called Kid Galahad, which is an exceptional script from the 1930s starring Edward G. Robinson, Bette Davis, and a young Humphrey Bogart. So it's interesting to see a young Bette Davis and a young Humphrey Bogart together. They also were in The Petrified Forest together, which is another favorite of mine, not directed by Michael Curtiz. But Kid Galahad is about a boxer and the mob operation around him, and Bette Davis plays Edward G. Robinson's girlfriend. And all her fire and vulnerability and passion are on full display. The role isn't the kind of meaty, layered roles that she would get once she hit really big. But it's a great script, and it's fun to see her early before she's fully known. She's kind of on her way up with Kid Galahad, but I really enjoy that film. So thank you, Michael Curtiz, for all the great cinema you made. And then, oh my gosh, I have to go to my list. Then it's Regina King's birthday this week, the great actress Regina King. I first saw Regina King in Jerry Maguire. She plays Cuba Gooding Jr.'s wife. And the second she came on the screen, I was like, who is that? She's just such a force on screen. I love her energy. I love seeing her. And it's her birthday this week. And she is having a long, great acting career. She finally won an Oscar a few years ago for her role in If Beale Street Could Talk, which was so beautiful. But she has also stepped into directing. She had her directorial debut a few years ago with a movie called One Night in Miami, which I really loved, starring Kingsley Ben-Adir, Aldous Hodge, Eli Gorey, and Leslie Odom Jr., and they play Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke. And it's based on a play where they're all hanging out together for an evening in Miami. And it's really moving. I've seen interviews with Regina King where she said, you know, we all know the sort of iconic, you know, energy of who these people are, but she wanted to dig down and get into their humanity. And I feel like these actors all did such beautiful work in this movie. And, you know, we're used to these biopics that center on one huge personality, important historical figure, surrounded by the people in their lives. But to have a film that takes four really important, huge personalities and puts them in a room together is kind of unusual. And because we're talking about four Black men dealing with the challenges of being famous in the 1960s in the United States, and because they can talk to each other in a way that they couldn't talk to other people, we get this sort of other lens into that experience that I found really moving. So One Night in Miami, please watch it. Happy birthday, Regina King. Can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you for all your beautiful work. And then it's Damien Chazelle's birthday. Damien Chazelle is most famous for directing La La Land. But his follow-up to La La Land was a movie I really love called First Man, where Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong, Claire Foy plays his wife, and it's about the NASA program to send a man to the moon and the whole process of that. But it's really about the human cost of that program and the effect that program had on, in particular, Neil Armstrong's family, the grief, the stress, the strain. You know, when I first heard that movie was coming out, I was sort of like, really, do we need another Send a Man to the Moon movie? But it turned out, yes, we did need another Send a Man to the Moon movie, because this is not like any other astronaut film that I've seen. It really is a combination of that sort of heroic journey into the unknown, combined with an intimate family drama about, a group of people under an incredible amount of stress. It's gorgeous. It's so beautifully shot. Most of the family scenes were shot in Super 8, so it just looks the way home video from the 60s looks. The moon landing sequence is stunning. The score it's hard to talk about how beautiful the score is. And I love this movie. It was one of my favorite movies from the year it came out. I think that was 2019, not 100% positive. And I felt like it got kind of overlooked. I'm a big fan of that one. So First Man by Damien Chazelle. Thank you so much, Damien. Happy birthday. And then lastly, I want to celebrate Capricorn filmmaker Deepa Mehta, who is an Indo-Canadian filmmaker who I first came to know of when I saw the first of her trilogy called the Elements trilogy. So she made 3 films, one called Fire in 1996, a movie called Earth in 1998, and a movie called Water in 2005. And they all center around the experience of different experiences of women in India. Deepa Mehta was born in India, grew up in India, went to college in Delhi, and then married a Canadian man and moved to Canada in the 70s and started making films in the 80s and 90s. And she has said that in her person, she's Indian, but stylistically and creatively, she's more influenced by the West or Canadian, American, European styles. And I think you can really feel that in her filmmaking. Her films are, definitely more realist and challenging than certainly the Bollywood cinema that is the most famous cinematic export of India. And the trilogy, she says, Fire is about the politics of sexuality, Earth is about the politics of nationalism, and Water is about the politics of religion. But the thing that I think Deepa Mehta is so good at is that each of these stories is really rooted in the human experience. So she said she doesn't make films to make a point. If she wanted to do that, she would make documentaries. She makes films to tell human stories, and she always starts with a story. And I think you can feel this kind of I think what's powerful about her films is that she goes very deep into these personal stories where everybody's three-dimensional, everybody has their humanity. Yes, there are people who do more harmful things than others, but we see why, we see their full experience. But by going into these deep lived experiences, she has created stories that then resonate on a more global, political, social scale. They're very powerful. I remember the first time I saw Fire on Earth in theaters and how moved I was, and how brave they seemed at the time. So, yay for Capricorn filmmakers. This is our first live real takes. Maybe we'll do this more. Who knows? Nobody knows. Thanks for tuning in. If you've seen any of these movies, please comment on them below. Tell me what you've been watching lately, and I will see you next Wednesday. And I have no idea how to turn this off. We're just gonna do this together. I think that's how I turn it off. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Yes.